Hello, I'm Dr. Peter Day, and I'm the Principal Investigator on the ANTI-SLAVERY Knowledge Network Phase 2 research project entitled Community Stories of Modern Slavery in Migori County, Kenya. Now, this is a community-based participatory research project using community media practices for the collection of community stories. We're funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the Global Challenges Research Fund. And the purpose of AKN, or AntiSlavery Knowledge Network Phase 2 projects, is to investigate modern slavery as a development challenge by creative, innovative approaches from the arts and the humanities to deliver community-engaged anti-slavery work. There are three key concepts that go to make up community media-based participatory research. The first is that as a research methodology or approach, it creates knowledge and understanding of communities. The second is that community media-based participatory research enables everyone to be involved in the research as a process of community development. And the third is that community media is utilised to support the community-based participatory research processes. In other words, community communications tools create community spaces for knowledge exchange, for learning, for understanding, and that feeds into processes of community development, empowerment, community voice, capacity and capability building. These are the essential concepts or elements of community media-based participatory research. In implementing this methodological approach, we developed a suite of community media-based participatory research methods. The first of which I will deal with in a minute, community conversations. The second is scenario-based participatory learning workshops. The third are community media participatory learning workshops. So that's practical learning by doing, or action learning, if you will. And then there's the actual research investigation itself in the community. So community-based participatory research story elicitation. We did a workshop in the first instance, and then it was out into the field for data collection of community stories of modern slavery in Migori County. Okay, let's turn to community conversations from South Kamagambo. Ostensibly, these are informal, facilitated conversations, similar to focus groups, with community groups and organisations. A kind of baseline survey. It was about contextualising and understanding community perceptions of modern slavery. We wanted to identify their definitions. What did slavery, modern slavery, mean to them? What did we think it meant? So there was this conversation between all partners in the community research project. And in that sense, it was a form of mutual sensitization. Now, we met with representatives there were about 30 or 40 representatives from Chamgiwadu community groups. We also then met with women's groups at Orembe Market, and we had a meeting with the teachers and students of the mixed secondary school at Omware for these conversations. Now, as Williamson argues, promoting and privileging the voice of community in ways that are respectful of local or indigenous practices and are culturally safe are crucial components of engaging and collaborating with communities in the research project. We used this as our guiding star for this research project. And that's why we decided, whilst we were waiting for ethics approval from both universities, that we would build on an earlier research meeting that we'd had in August 2019 with the community. We would build on that to develop a mutual understanding of what modern slavery meant to us. These meetings were really interesting, and time again, the community determined that in Migori County, where life, culture, and identity revolve around agriculture, modern slavery often focuses on the exploitation of subsistence farming families by large or larger companies. They also cited the mistreatment of local labour by foreign landowners. Foreign doesn't necessarily mean from overseas, it could be just from different tribes or whatever, who pay very low wages with no regards for the health, welfare and rights of the workforce, because they know that workers are desperate, living in poverty and possess little power to do anything about it. Now, that in itself was really interesting, because they linked from the very get-go of this project modern slavery with poverty, with mistreatment, with abuse of human rights, and with total disregard to human dignity. So it was all about exploitation in one way or another. The meetings also agreed, or the conversations also agreed, that women and children often suffered most from slavery, citing things like forced and underage marriages, child and forced labour on farms, sugar plantations, gold mines, domestic service, and the fishing industry, Migori County being on the banks of Lake Victoria, as being among the worst examples of slavery in their region. Poverty, familial deaths, mistaken hope for a brighter future, running away from domestic violence and sexual abuse, sexual predation, as well as outdated tribal customs were also listed as reasons why people often ended up in slavery. And an example that was cited on numerous occasions of such outdated customs is female genital mutilation. Now, this is not often identified as being part of modern slavery discourse, but there were strong feelings amongst community participants that it should be, because it is about exploitation, it's about powerlessness, and it's about abuse of human rights. The data collected from these community conversations was crucial for us on a number of levels. The first is, obviously, it gave us clearer understanding and knowledge of community perceptions and thoughts about modern slavery, what can be done about it, and what should be done about it. And we were able to use these perceptions in order to feed into the design of the next section of the methodology, the methods that we call participatory learning workshops. Now, in this project, because we adopt a community development ethos, we focus a lot on capacity and capability building. Now, building capacity is about developing and building the ability within the community to make and effect changes that improve and benefit community life, in this case by dealing with issues of modern slavery. Whereas capability is about building the skills of individuals or groups of individuals to actually do things. So capability building is about training, if you want. And in this project, there were two elements to that. The first, because this is community media based participatory research is that we break that down into community media practice. So there was training, there were workshops on community practices. In this instance, they wanted to learn about radio content creation. So we ran workshops on audio practices. The second is how to do research, community-based participatory research. And so our workshops, our participatory learning workshops, based as they are on action learning approaches, taught participants about community-based participatory research in one set of the workshops, and then about community media practices in the other. But it was more than that, because they learned about research ethics, they learned how to appropriate media technologies for data collection, in other words, collecting community stories. And as active participants in the PLW earlier on, they actually contributed to the design of the research planning through their participation in the community conversations. Now, it's through these participatory learning workshops and that participatory approach that participants witness their voices shaping the design of the research. They could reflect back on what they'd said and discussed previously and see that now feeding into the research. And in that essence, that gives them a sense of empowerment. So through these workshops, community participants, our community partners, were becoming both community researchers and community media practitioners, all with a view to applying those skills, that knowledge, that expertise in ways that later on will benefit their communities, as well as addressing issues of modern day slavery in Migori County.